Good afternoon. Here we are again, episode 6. Thank you very much to everybody for joining us. It's amazing to see people from as far afield as Jamaica. Hello, and I think it's on New Zealand in there somewhere. So we'll feel very privileged that so many people are joining us from all around the world. So thank you. Never let it said we are anything but ambitious at Nulty. Today we are going to be attempting, God help us, a Pecha Kucha on a history of light. 5 designers, 20 slides each, 20 seconds a slide. So yeah, fingers crossed it goes well. But before we start, just a couple of notices, I guess, for you. Obviously, please don't forget, on Tuesday of next week, we have my esteemed colleague, Emilio, who is joining us.
Good afternoon.
Providing providing a webinar on a manifesto for a good night's sleep. So it's a really interesting presentation, particularly those that are involved in the hospitality industry. So please do join 12:30 BST on Tuesday. The second announcement, actually, which is really interesting, is that today we are launching a photographic competition entitled Light Up Your Lockdown. If you go to our blog, and Emilio will shortly post a web link to our blog, you will see that there is a series of terms and conditions. Basically, take a lovely photo, post it, use the hashtag Light Up Your Lockdown, tag us at Nulty Lighting in it, and you stand a very good chance of winning a Mathmos lamp. We're going to be giving away 3 Mathmos light fittings to 3 eventual winners. So please do check it out. It should be fun, should be interesting. I think that's everything from me for now. I'm quite nervous about this one. So
well, you might be, Paul.
So good luck to everybody. And I will now hand over to Emilio, who will explain the rules, and I will see you all later.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Paul. We're all jammed in here today, as Paul said. We've got 6 of us, so it's quite busy in the webinar room. So Pecha Kucha, quite simply put it, means chit-chat. It's a speed presenting format, and it was developed in Tokyo about 17 years ago. It's quite the opposite of chit-chat, though. Each presenter, we have 5 of them today, they have 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide. I'll be quite ruthless on that time limit. And they have to get the information across. So they need to be very well organized and very concise to be impactful. It's worth noting this is quite stressful for the presenters, but that'll be half the fun for yourselves. And I think, Paul, you attended one of these a little while ago where people were given ping pong balls in the crowd to throw at the presenter if they disagreed with them or if they overran. So yes. Yeah,
I don't know what the virtual equivalent of a ping pong ball is, but I guess everybody wants to hit 0 in the chat if we're taking too long or you don't like what we're saying.
Yeah, hopefully we won't see too many of those. So, like I say, we've got 5 presenters. We've got some experience and some strong academic background. So I'll introduce them briefly, and if you can turn your cameras on, say hello as I do. So we'll start with Eliana Kafka. So she'll be presenting. Again, it's a history.
Hey all.
A history tour. So all of these are sort of history based in lighting. So this will be history of the light bulb. We'll start off with today. Then next up we have the history of theatre, and that's with Martina. Hi, Martina. And third we have the history of light art. That will be with Francesca.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, Francesca. Then Paul will follow those pretty tough acts on the history of architectural lighting design. And then last but not least, by any means, we have the history of lighting and advertising, which is with Dan Blaker. Hello, Dan. Looking cool. Okay. Down in sunny Brighton. Right, so those are the rules, 20 slides, 20 seconds. Obviously, we couldn't have lighting without the light bulb, or as we like to call it, a lamp. So we're going to begin with Eliana. The rest of you can turn your cameras off. And Eliana, are you ready to go? Let me just get the...
I think so, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So we'll get the slides ready. And it's 20 seconds a slide, starting now. Good luck.
Thanks. So fire, a primary light source until the Middle Ages, where they had a burning fire in a hole on the floor of the timber houses. At nightfall, the watchman had to make sure that everyone was covering their fires. This is when the curfew originated, from the French words which mean cover fire. From the Roman lamp to the first scientifically argan oil lamp, this is considered to be the first mass-produced light fitting, which can be seen from the maker's marks on the Roman lamp, which are similar to the modern brand logos. So by the Middle Ages, candle making was done by using insects, tree nuts, animal fat, and beeswax. After the 18th century, though, the most prevalent wax was the wax that was made from whale sperm. Gas lighting was used for street lighting mainly. However, the gasoliers in the Victorian households gave off a bad smell, blackened the walls, caused headaches. The Victorian people loved posing next to their favorite aspidistras plant because basically it was the only plant that could actually survive the gas. Kerosene lamps were widely used until the 1940s, and they're even used today in rural areas in Africa and Asia. Their main characteristic was their portability, and the fact that you could adjust the wick and the flame is considered by many to be the first dimming system. The arc lamp was the first practical electric light, but it was too bright to have in your home. The technology based in the arc lamp was used in the searchlights, the ones that we see in the 20th century Fox logo since the 1900s, and the same technology is used in movie projectors today. Contrary to popular belief, Edison did not invent the first incandescent bulb. Woodward with his partner did, and they sold it to Edison. Edison also wanted to sue Joseph Swan, who was also working on the bulb at the same time. However, they collaborated, they built their business, and they improved the incandescent bulb together. The invention of the first light bulb had the greatest influence on the design of light fittings. Luminaires were designed with glass in order to lower the light intensity of the bulb, and also to create beautiful patterns indoors in the households. Electrical wiring began to be installed in the households, and the replacement of the candles by the lamps enabled for the first time for the light source to be turned downwards, and the design of the light fittings was adapted to this. Now it was also the time for designers to start experimenting with the notion of flexibility and adjustability in their light fittings, like adjusting the suspension height of their pendants or adjusting the ceiling light, the angle of the ceiling lights to highlight objects on walls or architectural elements. Neon line was known as liquid fire. The world's first neon sign was sold to the Packard car dealership. The neon sign was so extraordinary that the drivers were distracted, and it actually stopped the traffic all the time. The basis of the fluorescent lamp dates back to the early 1900s. In 1938, though, the first luminaires to be introduced in the market was the Nita line, and it was introduced as a neat idea for people's homes and not for offices as we know them today. The introduction of the fluorescent lamp was enough competition for the manufacturers to start improving the technology of the incandescent bulb by inventing the tungsten halogen lamp. Because of the smaller compact size of the halogen lamp, designers started working on more creative and flexible luminaires like the Boalum luminaire. The sodium lamps are known for the street lighting, of course, and for the yellowish-orange color. Despite people disliking these color properties, it is the most favorite source for astronomical observations and for photographic laboratories. The metal halide bulb, known for sports field lighting, it is very popular with indoor plant growing plant growing applications. And oddly enough, it is the favorite source for people who have a hobby to grow coral reefs in their aquariums. The laser, known for medical applications and performances, is an old technology with Einstein setting the basis for it. The first ruby laser created some controversy, with articles of the time calling it the incredible laser that can light up the moon, perform miracle surgery, or kill instantly. The induction lamp, Tesla is considered to be by many the father of the induction lamp because of the crisp white light of the lamp and the fact that it doesn't flicker. It is really used in CCTV lighting applications. LED, or the magic one as they called it, the first LED to be introduced was the red LED. Next in line was the yellow, and then the blue, which actually won the Nobel Prize because it set the basis for the white LEDs as we know them today. LEDs, of course, have a long development history, if we can consider the fact that they started as indication lights, to be using them today, as we all know, as concealed lines in architecture, or even to create weaves in facades. OLED was introduced in TV screens as a more efficient technology than LCD. Because of its flexibility, designers started working on more organic shaped luminaires and kinetic sculptures. Although it's a 30-year-old technology, it's still not widely used because of the high cost of production.
Brilliant, and that's time. Well done, Ileana. Thank you so much for kicking that one off. Perfect timing, and hard act to follow there. So Martina, we'll have you up next. Let me just reset the stopwatch. And Martina is going to be the history of light in the theatre. You ready to go, Martina?
Exactly. Yes,
okay.
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, and begin.
The evolution of lighting in theatre began during the times of the ancient Greece. The performances were outside during the day, where the use of natural light was the primary source of illumination. Indeed, they created large mirrors mechanisms to divert the sunlight on stage and create lighting effects, such as thunderbolts or magical divine appearances. Later in the Middle Ages, miracles and mysterious plays were primarily performed outdoor at the front of the churches to divulgate the word of God. On rudimental scripts appeared explicit references to stars, flashing, lightings, and fires, although there is no record that these scenes were lighted differently from the mass itself. We cannot mention Brunelleschi, which is the first modern engineer and innovative problem solver. He created a very complex stage machinery for the Annunciation held in a church in Florence. Some of lighting effects were a starry sky in the church, dome made with candles, and the divine appearance was announced by fireworks rockets suspended in a nave. The Italian architect Sebastiano Serlo incorporated his theories on central perspective on stage and explored different lighting effects using candles behind flasks filled with colored water made by natural elements like saffron, ammonia salt, and wine, and also the first rudimental dimming system made with cans that were lowered down on candles. While in England, the Globe Theatre was used to perform summer performances outside at the William Shakespeare plays during the day, so no artificial light was applied. In winter, instead, the theatre was enclosed at the Blackfriars Theatre. So there's some like lightning like candles and torches. An important figure in lighting here is Indigo Jones, which introduced several innovations in lighting and stagecraft, using reflectors to intensify the light sources using colors on stage. Oil lamps and tallow candles set in a row were used along the front edge of the stage out of the sight of the audience, also used in a vertical rows. So the first major advance in the several centuries was the introduction of gas lighting in theatre. The conventions remained the same: footlight and front illumination, border lights for general lighting, and strip lights in a row with reflector to illuminate scenic wings and change color effects. The next great important advance was the introduction of the electrical carbon arc lamp, experimented in 1808. The Paris Opera developed the earliest electric arc effects to represent a beam of sunlight in 1846, and the earliest spotlight included lens and shutter. Le Fuller is a dancer who achieved international distinction for her innovations in theatrical lighting, combined to her innovative serpentine dance. With lighting projected on her dress, she was able to create colorful effects to enhance movements. Later, she developed the fire dance, where the lighting was located under a transparent platform on stage. We are moving now to the Mariano Fortuny and his naturalistic theater. He developed an elaborated system of soft reflected light using arc lights on a dome-shaped cyclorama. Flooded with light, the simulation of natural lighting was remarkable, and it gives the illusion of infinity space. In opposition to the naturalistic vision, we have the surrealism of Adolf Appia. It was very close to Richard Wagner's theories of a new possibility for the use of light and design in a unified production, a lyrical synthesis. Indeed, Appia gave life to new plastic stagecraft conceived as a cubed volumes with a continuous plays of light and dramatic shadows. Beside Appia, there is a Thomas Wilfred, which created the Clavilax, a mechanical invention that we can recognize as the first colored light projection, designed to create a kind of contemporary audiovisual shows. Clavilax was like an organ to produce fluid light forms instead of music, enabling the silent composition of Lumia. We move now to the avant-garde, where futurism, description of movement and dynamism, considered the light as independent medium of expression. Giacomo Balla in Fireworks used reflective solid shapes on stage that became alive thanks to a quick change of light scenes, while Fortunato De Pero designed costume with translucent materials and integrated light. In this period, Kandinsky experienced the neurological phenomenon called synesthesia, a condition in which one sense, like hearing, currently triggered another sense, such as sight. He explored these sensations in an unconventional artistic way. In theater performances, for example, he used original music scores, lighting, and various media to experiment with colors. The Bauhaus movement considered the theater as a totality for different elements. Therefore, lighting, music, visual composition, and actors had equal importance on stage. Molloy Nagy invented the light space modulator to control interplay of lights and shadow through mechanical motions. Basically, the forerunner of kinetic art. And now I couldn't mention Jean Rosenthal, the first half of the 20th century. Lighting designer was not formalized position. Rather, the set designer or electrician handled the lighting of a production. Rosenthal helped the lighting designer to become an integral member of the design team. She said lighting was a career of itself. Beginning of the contemporary theater, we have Svoboda, which is a Czech designer. He was one of the most creative innovators in lighting and stage of the second half of the century. For some production, he used massive three-dimensional screen to create a montage of effects of slides and film with multiple projections. We have Robert Wilson, which is an experimental theater stage director and playwright, internationally acclaimed as being one of the most significant visionary artists. The light has always been his form of expression, and he is influenced by Japanese Noa theater, where the body language is part of the narrative of the lighting. As Devlin, in the past 25 years, established herself as the world's most influenced set designer, and she moved from theater to large-scale concerts, like for Beyonce, West End weekends. I would like to conclude this journey with the strong media of video technology, which has been influencing theater for decades, but never easier and affordable to incorporate into production as today. 2D and 3D projections are an integral part of the aesthetic of a concert, ballets, and also used as interactive media for performances for kids.
Fantastic time there. Well done, Martina. Great work. Well done. Take a bow and a breath. That's a lot of ground to cover in a very short period of time. I think we're all a big fan of the Robert Wilson as well, and that's really strong images. So staying with the arts, we're going to move over to Francesca. Hi, Francesca. How you going? This is PechaKucha on the history of light art. Are you ready?
Yes, ready.
Okay, I'm just going to reset this again. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Go.
So, history of art is the history of depicting light. In paintings, light emphasizes shapes, colors, and textures, giving depth to objects, and without it, the composition would appear only dull and lifeless. We can see how, during the centuries, many artists used it in a different way, from the Renaissance on. Around the 30s, the light started to be used in a different way, not just to portray something realistically and on a bidimensional artwork, but as a real medium and in a three-dimensional way. And artists started to create it with light, sculptures, installations, or visual experiences. So one of the first artists who started doing this was Lucio Fontana. He created his so-called spatial environments using neon lights or fluorescent objects, and with the aim to overcome the distance between art and the viewer, creating these immersive spaces where people could live art all around themselves. So during the same period, the 60s, the Latin space movement was born in California. It was the first art movement who especially used lighting for creating this immersive space and minimalist luminous installations. The research focused on visual perception and optical illusion, and they played with light and color to manipulate our perception. One of the main artists for this movement is Dan Flavin. He made these well-known minimalist installations playing with color, shapes, and geometry, creating these lines of light that really interact with the space, creating a dynamic, colored atmosphere for the viewers. And along with him, we have Robert Tywin, another member. He creates immersive environments using both natural and artificial lighting, as well as architectural elements, and to manipulate the viewer's perspective of the space. His art was called conditional, which intended to be absolutely responsive to its environment, enhancing the viewer's experience of the space. And after Tywin, we have, of course, Turrell. He didn't create objects, but visual experiences where light sources are hidden, colors and light intensity slowly shapes, creating these contemplative and dynamic atmospheres. His intent was to reflect on mechanism of perception rather than just the perception of a particular object. And he wanted to reflect on how we perceive the space. So during the same period, Yayoi Kusama started creating her famous infinity rooms. These are completely mirrored rooms with luminous globes, these luminous funny pumpkins or lanterns that are endlessly repeated in the room, creating this feeling of space. Another artist is Anthony McCall. He started creating dynamic shows using animated beam of light, creating these beams rotating and moving continuously in space, creating really a dynamic and immersive experience for the viewers. Regine Schumann is another artist who tried to make light more solid. She started creating these very simple light boxes or curved surfaces with integrated lighting and trying to make a surreal atmosphere using color and light intensities. Of course, we have Olafur Eliasson. He combines art, science, and natural phenomena to enhance the viewer perception and making people reflect on their relationship with nature, natural phenomena, and the universe. He used very often light as a medium for his installation, playing with shadows, colors, and transparencies to affect perception. Dan Rosengarder is another artist who really connects to nature. His sculptures and installations made with lighting to aesthetically improve urban areas and create better living conditions for people, creating these landmarks around the cities. Another artist staying with landscape lighting is Bruce Munro. He used light and ordinary and some waste material to create this huge installation in the landscape, making this brilliant and monumental colored field of light, which really stands during the night to make an emotional response into viewers and create surreal. Then we move to light art connected to technology. We have Kerry Wynne Evans, who creates this huge luminous sculpture made with flickering and pulsing light, pulsing on a Morse code, and the Morse code is a translation of a text, so it's a new kind of communication inside the space. On the same note, Leo Villarreal creates installation with white and multicolored lights with pulsing, flickering, and fading is controlled by a computer, and this randomized light pattern inside the space creates a portal to another universe, to another dimension. Similarly, Christopher Bauder aims to translate digital and intangible information into visual experience and dynamic shows. So he used light, sound, and motion to trigger an emotional response to viewers and create these unique atmospheres. Still keeping with technology, we have Maya Patrick. She combines lighting, sound, and computer technology, especially the cutting-edge technology, to make people feel more close to nature and the universe. So she creates this very immersive installation with flickering lights that creates another world, a particular experience. Matthew Sharber instead creates light installation using contrast between light and shadows and dark, using especially lasers and holograms. And he basically molds light in the air with the intent of bringing the viewer to another world, another dimension, and create surreal spaces. Then we have Team Lab, who similarly wants to create this dynamic shows for the viewer. Their intent is to use lighting as a medium to make people more close to art, but at the same time, it's the viewer himself who have an impact on the art, just being in the exhibition space itself. And I'd like to conclude talking about light festivals around the world. So festivals are a very important tool to make people more close to art and more aware of the power of lighting and how it can be used to convey important messages and artistic ideas in a multitude of different ways.
And that is time, and that is how you do it. Thank you so much, Francesca. That was brilliant. Virtual round of applause there. That was a masterclass in the arts and in timing.
Thank you.
Great, some great examples there. Good to see, Terrell and Olafelius and Leo Villarreal, Team Lab, all things which have been on display in London in the last last year or so, and great to see so many other options. Paul, how do you feel following that?
Like a lamb to the slaughter.
It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, I apologise now for the absolute bastardisation of the architectural lighting industry that I'm about to give. So I've never felt under more pressure, to be honest with you. Thank you to the first three presenters.
Well done, guys.
That's how you do it. Well done. And the next two presenters, you're going to see how not to do it, I suspect. So,
right. Paul, your talk's on the history of architectural lighting design.
Yeah, apparently so.
I am just going to reset this, and are you ready to take it away in 3, 2, 1, go?
Okay. The history of architectural lighting design. We have a lot of gratitude to give, actually, to people like Derek Phillips, who founded DPA Lighting in 1958. We wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for the people that really ploughed that lone furrow, in the early years. So a lot of homage should be paid, particularly to people like Howard Branston and Andre Tamez, who founded LDP with this little known guy called Jonathan Spears that you may well have heard of. Obviously, LDP also was a springboard for people like Barry Hannaford and Tim Downey and Doug James and Sharon Stammers, lots of different people. We do not pay enough respect or homage to the history of our industry and the people that worked incredibly hard to raise the level of the industry that we work in. However, you don't want me to sit here today talking about a bunch of old men with beards. So if you do want to know more about the history of that, then please do look at the Light Collective Lighting Design family tree. Sharon's on this call somewhere, I saw her. So please do have a look at that, because there's a lot of information about the history of our industry. I think it's really important. What I do want to talk about, though, are some of the most groundbreaking projects, according to Paul Nulty, and of which one of those is the original Moonlight Towers, which is using arc lamps, which is really one of the first examples of citywide master planning and looking at how lighting can affect an entire city. And then we move on to something like the World Fair, where Edison first promoted the light bulb in 1893. He did that by basically plastering every single building with lights, which was amazing, and a really groundbreaking use of architectural lighting, beyond how it had been used before. And then we fast forward 20 years. Neon obviously invented in 1898, but by 1920 and through the 20s, we were plastering buildings, particularly in Miami, with lots of neon. And it was one of the first examples of how lighting became more important than the architecture. You know, we were looking at the light sources. And then we fast forward a few more years to somewhere like Harrods, which they were using just incandescent light bulbs. But again, it was about the feature, using the light fitting and the light source as the feature to define the form of the building. So, you know, really good example of how to make an iconic building, I guess, iconic. This is actually suggested by Sharon Stammers, so I blame her. The Solar Lumiere at Luxor, this is like from the 1960s onwards, was really the forerunner for light festivals in across the world. Whether you love it or loathe it in terms of the garish colours that are used, being able to hook light and sound up for an event was really quite a groundbreaking thing to do. The Hoover Building by Imagination from 1989. It's one of the first uses of coloured metal halide light sources. You know, notwithstanding the fact that actually they had to dim the lighting or block out 50% of the lighting because it was too bright and causing an awful lot of light trespass and pollution. It looked amazing and it captured people's imaginations. You know, and it's a beautiful Art Deco building. The Elgin Marbles by Lighting Technology Project. Before they relit this space in '94, they were using 300-hour lamp sources, incandescent light sources. It was pulling 40, 50 kilowatts of energy. They replaced it with searchlights with beautiful beams, 6,000-hour metal halide lamps. It was almost more revolutionary than changing from a metal halide light source to an LED light source. It was absolute cutting-edge use of technology. We get to 1998, one of my favorite projects in the world ever, the Albert Memorial by the Lighting Design Partnership. Just a classic example of how to light simply but beautifully. You know, it's one of the most beautifully implemented pieces of lighting design I think I've ever seen, and it's so subtle. Howard Branston's lighting design, 1998, Petronas Towers, the tallest buildings in the world at the time. Again, wonderfully executed piece of lighting design. Yes, there's tons of light pollution and trespass. Yes, it uses high energy metal halide light sources, but the skill in lighting a building of that form, of that nature, with that much glass is really quite incredible, and it's an iconic building. Fast forward 1999, there was a bit of a rich vein of form with architectural lighting projects in the late 90s. BDP's Nighttown, one of the first projects that really focused on experience, miles ahead of its time, because that's exactly where the retail high street is doing now. It's where it's at now. Beautifully implemented. Kevin, I know, was on this call, and I apologize, but you know, the Burj Al Arab, for me, one of the most iconic pieces of hotel hospitality design. The atrium space it's internally illuminated with just borrowed light. It's beautiful. It uses lots of cold cathode, used to use lots of cold cathode in really well executed details. It's a beautiful piece of lighting design, miles ahead of its time. The White Cube Gallery by Mind's Eye kick-started the kind of minimalist lighting revolution. You know, in 2000, this was the first projects, one of the first projects that used plaster-in light fittings that we all specify on a regular basis these days. So really way ahead of its time and plowed a new furrow. Likewise, for the Kunsthausglas by Realities United in 2003, one of the first ever media facades using circular T5 fluorescent lamps, each lamp individually dimmable as though it's a pixel, blazed a trail really for how buildings and media facades can be integrated. 2006, the British Antarctic Survey, Martin Valentine, a really beautifully executed scheme that none of us are really ever going to see. But it's, you know, a great example of how LEDs could be used in absolute extreme temperatures. So beautiful piece of engineering. Abercrombie and Fitch, the only job where the emergency lighting is brighter than the normal lighting. Again, blazed a trail for the retail lighting world, because suddenly it wasn't a race to see who could be the brightest. Suddenly they made more impact by having less light. So completely redefined the way retail lighting worked. Chateau de Versailles by LEA, beautiful project. And it goes full circle, because this is a DMX controlled piece of facade lighting that is designed to look like it's illuminated with candlelight. So we get this beautiful flickering and this rich tapestry of lights. This beautiful kind of full circle. We use modern technologies in a way to recreate what old technologies would have used. And finally, breathe, Bloomberg by Tillerson Design, you know, again, has really made a giant leap forward for how we illuminate offices, because Suddenly it's about feature ceiling panels with LEDs beautifully integrated into the infrastructure of the project. So really well executed. That's me. And breathe.
That's time. Well done, Paul. Thank you for that. And well recovered from the little technical glitch there.
Yeah.
The Kunsthaus Graz, I didn't realize that was circular T5s. That's insane. Wow. So, yeah, another great whistle-stop tour through architectural lighting. And now for the man known in the office as Mr. Concise, Daniel Blaker.
Bonjour.
Welcome, bonjour. So Daniel's going to talk about the history of lighting in advertising. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, and begin.
Okay, obviously lighting and advertising had to sort of go hand in hand. So the first sort of light bulb involved roughly around 1904 by sort of Edison and Swan. It wasn't until it became sort of more standardized in 1913, as this one here, where the inert gas replaced the vacuum inside and the screw was standardized that it could be used in advertising readily available. I'm using a case quite close to home here. This is Piccadilly Circus in London. However, the lighting was sort of used in Piccadilly Circus for the first Perrier signage, which is 1908. It was in 1923 that this sort of 6-screen hoarding on one of the facades took place as we know it today. Later down the line, some fluorescents, high voltage fluorescent called cathode came along in the 1920s. Very important, invented by a guy called Claude Neon, George Claude, and this company's called Claude Neon. And through a lot of different iterations of phosphor coatings, you could generate different colors and forms because it could be curved. This sort of gave rise to, again, Piccadilly Circus and the evolution of that in 1932 or 1930s through the 1940s. You can see here that a lot of branding and signage adopted this new freedom of form and color and tone to create different shapes and forms to support their brands. So side note here, actually, the lights in Piccadilly Circus actually went dark for 10 years in between 1939 and weren't turned back on until 1949 after the war. And this is the sort of scene when the lights came back on after things sort of picked up and resumed. Sort of the first mass-produced, generally available sort of low-volt fluorescent light was released by General Electric at the World's Fair in 1939, and this sort of huge-scale commercialization of sort of fluorescent tubes as we know it today allowed many new avenues of advertising to take form. Seen here, sort of taking that slightly further on the line, as we saw then, London sort of had a bit of a, even though these other news sources were released in around sort of 1930s, because the lights weren't switched back on until 1949, that sort of advertising didn't really take a foothold again in anywhere, or London especially, until sort of the 50s, 60s, as we can see in this image, very vibrant and colourful. Then we have the sort of moving forward, obviously those sources, wherever they were sort of done, efficiency and controllability and things led to LEDs coming on board and being embraced. The first LED, blue LED in 1993 meant that the sort of first screen, red, green, blue mixed to make white, was available sort of shortly after in 1994. This sort of took place and represents itself again into the advertising in Piccadilly Circus. You see here the 5 main screens called lights went from neon to LED in sort of the early 2000s, late 90s. And Hyundai sort of purchased the first one of these lights in 17 years. So they were occupied by the same people for many, many years, each of these 5 screens. And then in 2017, that screen kind of got replaced with one large scale, those 5 screens, one large scale, single unified screen. What's interesting about this screen is that not only is it a high definition screen, I think it consists of thousands of individual LED pixels, but it actually tracks you, monitors you, looks at facial expressions, can tell which screen you're looking at, can tell your sex, aim, gender, and your mental disposition. It doesn't have to be that sophisticated and clever, though. It can be, everything can be achieved using quite simple and modest means. And to a certain extent, the LED screen sort of got away with that sort of playful and that artfulness of the screens. This is a Dracula, BBC Dracula show that comes alive and reveals itself from a point source after sundown, which is a very clever use of when the Dracula, Count Dracula would sort of come out. As with any adoption of lighting, hierarchy is key here. This is a theatre, and a sort of footprint of buildings and establishments on the high street is key. So the bigger, the brighter, the better. Incandescent light sources were used to outline theatres and cinemas from the 1920s, from when they were available commercially. Again, moving forward, as soon as fluorescent and coloured fluorescent specifically came available, and neon, theatres as well adopted those because they could be used to follow forms and contours and promote colours and characters of buildings and statement. Then also the sort of avenue for backlighting came on when cold cathode, but also the sort of off-the-shelf commercially available fluorescent lights came on the scene, sort of in the late 30s and early 40s. You could backlight signage, making it really the first sort of screens. Now, the sort of predisposition to so bigger and brighter and better is synonymous with America and Vegas. Sort of a sort of brashness applied to quite a lot of the sort of identification there. And this is you know, obviously everyone knows the Las Vegas sign and the lights of Las Vegas. With clever switching and really primitive and early control systems, switching and sequencing could be used to create animations. Something else that could be used both with neon and incandescent sources to create a sort of enforced brand or advertisement identity. Interesting side note here. I mean, the symbology is also one of those things that is, you know, embraced by lighting, and sort of jukeboxes are one of those sort of Americana images. But I found it quite interesting to know that there's color changing and bubbles in the early 1940s. This is 1946 Wurlitzer, and actually uses a fluorescent tube with a color wheel around it that rotates, giving it its color change form. I think sort of wayfinding as well. It's interesting to sort of mention the use of lighting and color, and especially neon in this image here, where you have lighting as a sort of way of means of identification and sort of wayfinding really, and you have everyone's sort of familiar with the sort of cultural identity of certain districts and certain parts of town. As a way of that, sort of that links well into signage. Signage is always used as a way of advertising where things are and, you know, or who you are. I think in most districts and in America specifically, that's used to a very flamboyant manner in which to communicate a sense of interest and intrigue. Coming up more up to date, you have projection, which is a very versatile medium that can be used to keep both the canvas and the source remote from each other. Being used here to show the London City Hall near Tower Bridge as a giant rugby ball for advertisement of the Rugby World Cup in 2015. So very flexible. And that's it. And
that's time. Thank you very much, Dan. I take it back. That was perfect timing again. Well done. And I noticed that all of your cultural districts in wayfinding were sort of fixed around one sort of medium, but we won't sort of go any further into that. So yeah, thank you very much. That was some amazing range of reference material there. I think this video is going to be one of the most creative resources that we upload onto our YouTube channel. There's so much ground being covered there.
I'll tell you what it does for me, Emilio. It makes me incredibly proud of the industry we work in and the roles that we do, and I love it. And when you get that kind of historic refresher, it really makes you think, yeah, you know, short of being an astronaut or a professional footballer, I think I might want to be a lighting designer.
Well, brilliant. I mean, there's lots of great feedback coming through from people here that I didn't really give a format for people to ask questions per se. But on the positive note, I can't see any zeros or ping pong balls being thrown, which is really good to see. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of information to take in from anyone, you know, anyone that's been watching. And I think, yeah, I'll certainly need to re-watch all of those to actually absorb a lot of the information that was sent. So thanks so much, everyone, for your effort in making such concise presentations.
Oh, thank you. And again, just to remind people that are watching, if they're still here, you know, thank you. We are here back again on Tuesday. It'll be Emilio and Kale, I think, isn't it, Emilio?
Yeah, myself and Kale.
Yeah, presenting the Manifesto for a Good Night's Sleep. It's really interesting because it talks a lot about sleep patterns and the impact of light and how that affects the hospitality industry as well. So really interesting talk. And Emilio, if you could just post again the link somewhere to the blog for our photographic competition. Please take your photos, put them on Instagram or other social media. Please tag us at Nulty Lighting and use the hashtag #LightUpYourLockdown. you stand a very good chance of winning a Mathmos lamp. There are 3 Mathmos lamps up for grabs. So just doing our bit to keep life interesting and fun for everybody. So please do have a look at it, and yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Just posted that in the chat bar. I'll post it a few more times before we bow out and put it in the sticky note as well.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, everyone, and have a lovely afternoon.
Take care.
Thank you.